Yes, Provost, there's apologies from Councillor Davey.
Apologies from Councillor Davey. Thank you, that's noted. Item 2, declarations of interest. Members are reminded in the terms of the Code of Conduct of the responsibility to make decisions about whether to declare an interest of any item on this agenda, whether to take part in any discussions or voting. I would see there's a hand up from Councillor Cheap.
Yeah, thank you, Provost. Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to declare a non-financial interest in agenda item 4 and agenda item 5, report numbers 8/22 and 9/22. I'm a council appointed trustee director of Christie Golf Links Management Company Limited and Christie Golf Links Limited. As much as I would like to take part in the debate and vote this afternoon, I believe I have a personal conflict, as both the Companies Acts and the Charities and Trustee Investment Act 2005 impose obligations on me to act in the best interests of the company and charity, and those obligations thus conflict with my role as a councillor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cheap. Councillor Fairweather.
Thank you, Provost. Provost, along with yourself, we had a meeting with Michael Wells. He did show us a presentation regarding Carnoustie Golf Links going forward. I made no comment, so I will take part in any debate or voting today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Fairweather. And I declare exactly the same note of interest as Councillor Fairweather. Any other declarations?
Provost, yes. Could I just come back and just say I meant to finish off by saying that I obviously I've decided not to participate in discussion and voting. Will leave the meeting.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Tree. Thank you.
Yep. Yes, Provost, you maybe don't see my hand up.
I haven't. No, carry on.
I have a similar declaration to Councillor Cheap as council appointed member on Carnoustie Links board. So again, I would very much like to have taken part, but feel the conflict of interest would be apparent. So I will take no further part in the decision-making process.
Thank you very much, Councillor Miles.
Leave the meeting. Yeah. Until leave the meeting.
You can now leave the meeting.
No, not yet. No, not yet.
Right, if we move on now to
Councillor Whiteside.
Oh, Councillor Whiteside, sorry, I didn't see your hand, Councillor Whiteside.
Thank you, Provost. I was invited as a council representative to the Ladies Open at Carnoustie Golf Club, like several members of the administration. I attended as a council representative. I declined the offer of full hospitality, but I did attend for lunch, and that has been declared on my register of interests. I do intend to stay and take part in the debate and voting. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Whiteside. Exactly the same function that both Councillor Fairweather and I were at, and which were both declared. Thank you. Are there any others then before I move on to the next item, item 3? Okay, thank you. Possible exclusion of public and press. The council are asked to consider in terms of the Standing Order 28(2), where the public and press should be excluded during the consideration of item 4 only, so as to avoid the disclosure of information which is exempt in terms of Part 1 of Schedule 7A to the Local Government Scotland Act 1973. Colleagues, is that agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen of the public, before we switch off the live stream, I just want to remind you that the viewing of the live stream will be recommenced when members come back to consider item 5. So although you have to leave now, you will be able to return when we come to discuss item 5. Can we confirm that the live stream has now been
again.
Everybody.
Yes.
Right, colleagues, thank you. We now move on to item 5. You can see the report and the recommendations laid out before you. Before we move forward on that, I would just like the Councillor Fairweather and the Chief Executive just to say a few words. Councillor Fairweather.
Provost, can I go first?
What? Sorry. I beg your pardon. Sorry, Mrs. Williamson, on you go.
Thank you. Thanks, Provost. I just want to start by thanking members who attended the extensive briefing with council officers on Tuesday. There was a huge turnout and it was really, really helpful in considering the reports before us today. The briefing included members of CGLMC who currently operate and manage the golf courses at Carnoustie Links. Members engaged in a full exploration of the potential long-term future of our asset, Carnoustie Golf Links, with the current managers, and then in a session exclusively with our key officers. At the briefing, it was outlined to members that making long-term decisions which the council and its residents will live with for a long time is the most important decisions that councils can make. And members fully understand their accountability to the public for that, and the questions in the briefing fully reflected that. Today, members have required to meet again previously to this meeting, which has been in private, and the reason for that is that the report that was put before them did contain commercially sensitive information, which was really essential to inform their consideration of the report that we're hearing about just now. I wish to put on record my thanks to our officers, Alison, Watson, Ian Lorimer and Jackie Buchanan, for getting to this important milestone, and for all the thoughtful comments made by elected members and poignant questions to get us to the position today. Today, members are fully aware of the decision they're going to be making in terms of its long-term future, and it will allow us as officers to be able to consider fully what our next steps are. So thank you for that, Provost.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Williamson.
Provost, I'm sure Mrs. Williamson must have been looking over my shoulder at my notes. But anyway, I'll plough on. I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank the officers for their full and comprehensive briefing on Tuesday. We had a very good and open discussion between elected members, the officers and members of the CGLMC. I'm sure that members may want to make further points and raise further questions today. May I also thank the officers for all their tremendous work and effort to get to where we are today. This is a hugely important issue for Angus Council, the people of Carnoustie and the rest of Angus. The Carnoustie Links is a jewel in our crown, and it is an important contributor to the Angus economy and the jobs that go with it. The decision we are considering today will have a long-term consequences for a number of generations, so it is important that we get it right. The decision will involve foresight of international golf competitions, the hotel and leisure businesses, and judgments on the selection of partners and terms of long-term contracts. That is why we as an administration asked officers way back at the start of last year to involve specialist advisors to work with them to consider all aspects of this issue. We now have a number of different options, and I consider it right to ask officers to complete their work and due diligence on each of these options. This is what bringing this motion to a special council meeting seeks to do. Provost, I will be moving the report. Thank you, Provost.
Thank you, Councillor Fairweather. Questions, colleagues? Any questions? Councillor McMillan Douglas?
Provost, thank you very much. Now that we're in a public meeting, I want to ask the question, please, of why we are continuing to look at a number of options and haven't perhaps reduced these further. It's up to officers to decide who answers that, but perhaps Mrs. Williamson or Mr. Lorimer.
Mr. Lorimer or Mrs. Williams?
Thank you, Provost. I'm happy to take that one if that's okay.
Yep.
Yeah, so we're recommending, we've identified 5 options. We're recommending doing further work on 4 of those. Really, it's primarily about ensuring and demonstrating best value. This is one of the, one of the more significant. It's a significant public asset, a unique asset for Angus. There's more than one way, I think, to achieve key objectives here, which is why we've identified a number of options. As Councillor Fairweather has alluded to there, the decisions here carry long-term economic and financial consequences, not just for the council, but for the wider economy. And really, at this stage, we've not done enough due diligence on all of those options to be able to recommend only one at this stage. There is, I suppose, a degree of overlap among some of the options. They aren't completely unique, so it's less. There's a bit of work that will help on looking at all of those options, but really about best value, the significance of the decision, and the fact that we need further due diligence is why we're recommending that we take forward 4 options out of the 5 at this stage, and really saying the only one that's not recommended is do nothing. Thank you, Provost.
Thank you very much. Are you happy with that answer, Councillor McMillan Douglas?
Yes, I'm very comfortable with it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Salmon, you're next on the list. Councillor Salmon. Okay.
Sorry, Provost, it helps if you unmute yourself. I just want to pick up on Mr. Lorimer's point there about the status quo and why we're not moving that one forward. Can you maybe just give us an explanation, please, to why that's not one of the options being considered?
Yeah. Thank you, Provost. Yeah, happy to do that. One of the things that we felt was important when we were looking at the options was to assess those different options objectively and on a consistent basis. So you'll see in the report that we've identified a number of criteria, and we've scored the different options against those criteria. Now, option 1 scored poorly. It scored the poorest of all the options. And the reasons for that are really outlined in Appendix B. There's a couple of 0 scores for option 1 within there. And ultimately, I suppose our conclusion was that the doing nothing was too risky in terms of delivering some of the objectives and the things that we would want to see for Carnoustie for the long term. And ultimately, we felt that we needed to be proactive rather than passive, I would say, in relation to what the future needs to be for this important asset. So hopefully that answers the question, Councillor Salmon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next on the list, Councillor Boyd.
Hello, I have a question to do with the consultation. If we agree public consultation will go ahead. Of course, it will go ahead because it is mandatory for us as a council to do that. But the question I have is, will the Carnoustie Golf Links be involved with that public consultation as well? I'm conscious that they were when the Pro Centre was built, and there was a lot of good public consultation. And I don't think I'm talking out of turn because Mike Wells has offered. He's offered to be part of that public consultation, and I think that would get everyone in a win-win situation. So I suppose the question is, can Mike Wells and the Carnoustie Golf Links management be part of that public consultation? And my second part of the question is directed, I suppose, at Jane, or who does our publicity. I want to try and ensure that if at any point in time we are doing this public consultation, it isn't done by social media or death by social media. So I'd like to think that whenever things do go up on our council website page, along with therefore onto our Facebook page and so on, that we can really try and nip in the bud, or at least advise members of the public that Facebook is not the forum to do that. They really need to fill in the relevant forms and give the relevant consultation. So that wouldn't only just be for our own website, but for the Carnoustie websites that are there where we've had countless comments already. And of course, as councillors, we can't go back because we'd have to therefore declare an interest. So I really want officers to do their utmost to try and make sure that consultation is all encompassed through the right channels. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I don't know, Mrs. Williamson or Mrs. Buchanan, maybe best advise on that. Question. I should either Mrs. Williamson, the Chief Executive, or maybe Mrs. Buchanan.
I'm happy, Provost, to come in on the nature of the consultation and who it would involve. Obviously, given the commercial sensitivities around the various options, any consultation would need to be pitched at a relatively high level, and that it would need to involve and be discussed with CGLMC and really other partners too. So that would be the intention, Councillor Boyd. In terms of the actual nature of the consultation and involvement of social media, perhaps Mrs. Williamson would like to come in on that, but I'm sure it would be appropriate in terms of whatever nature that was taken.
Okay, Mrs. Williamson,
yeah, just to follow on from that, and I think we discussed this a bit at the beginning. I mean, as an elected member, you're the voice of everyone in your community, individuals, groups, and businesses, and you'll be doing your own work in this view in order to be feeding back either on the consultation or at meetings such as this. As far as social media is concerned, well, we monitor social media and, we feed back on that where we can, as does members of the public. I mean, we've got discerning members of the public who will be reading social media as well.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Mr. Buchanan. Mr. Lorimer, you've got your hand up. So I presume you want to reply on Councillor Boyd's question as well.
Yes, thank you, Provost. And it was just to add to what colleagues have said. Assuming the Council agrees the recommendations in the report, as far as public consultation is concerned, the plan is to bring another report with the detail and the content of what that consultation would say and how it would be taken forward. So there would be a further report with the details of that to come before Council for consideration before the consultation actually takes place. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Boyd, are you happy with all the explanations and answers?
Yes, that's absolutely superb. Thank you both, all three for these comments, that's not excellent news moving things forward. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Boyd. Councillor Moore.
Yes, thank you, Provost. I'm glad Councillor Boyd asked the question about consultation because I'd like to follow up on it. In section 10, we have a table and it includes the public consultation. June and July 2022, right in the middle of the school holidays. And I'm just wondering whether it should be extended so that people who have gone on holiday have got time to be consulted and to respond, other than just, it drops in with all the holiday and it gets forgotten about or it gets overlooked. I'd like to make sure that we do have good consultation, a meaningful consultation. And I think that the timing there is not the best that it could be.
Okay, I go back to council officers, Mr. Lorimer.
Councillor, I'm happy to pick that up. I mean, that's obviously a matter for members to consider, but in the current age of social media, even when people are on holiday, a period such as June and July, I wouldn't say as being really that problematic. We've got a bit of a challenge here around getting the information that we require back to you as soon as we can, doing that in a timely fashion, but also doing it in a very thorough fashion. So we don't want to rush it. But equally, we don't want to delay any decisions that could have an impact on the options that members eventually decide on. So it's, you know, it's something for you to consider, but I'm not seeing it as a huge consideration given the consultation will be online and it'll be well publicised before that period of time when it goes live.
Okay, thanks very much for that, Mrs. Williamson.
Yeah, if I can come back, Provost.
Yeah, really, yeah.
This is where I'm worried. The consultation's online, the consultation social media. Mrs. Williamson's mentioned both of those, but we haven't mentioned any forms so that people can pick up a form in the libraries or at sports centres, etc., hoping they're open by then, so that those who are not sitting on social media and those who do not go online on a regular basis can be involved. It needs to be a thorough consultation. It needs to be more than just social media and online, and it needs to be more than just the school holidays. Is there going to be a problem by extending it further so that it comes back to the council meeting after August?
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Moore. Williamson, do you want to reply?
Yeah, thanks, Provost, and thanks, Councillor Moore. I wasn't meaning exclusively social media. Sorry if I put it across that way. As Mr. Lorimer said earlier, this will be subject to another report that will have to come back to Council to sign off the public consultation as much as anything. And considerations such as that will be taken into account and no doubt further to debate when the report actually comes.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Mrs. Williamson. Okay, Councillor Moore. I'll now move on to Councillor Speed.
Thank you, Provost. Going by recommendations and in light of Councillor Fairweather wishing to move the report, how long do you estimate that it will take for officers to address the options, given the disrupted progress detailed in the report under risks on page 13 and considering current challenges and demand on services and officers' capacity at this time?
Okay. Mr. Lorimer, would you maybe be able to have an answer on that, or maybe the Chief Executive?
Yeah, happy to come in on that one, Provost. Yeah, what we've tried to do in the latter part of the report with the table on page 12 in terms of what the actions and the indicative timescales would be, and then how we would resource that work. There is a significant amount of work to be done here. It will need to be done alongside all of the other work and demands on staff and indeed councillors. And that is partly why we're recommending that we also bring in some specialist additional support to help us with this. But I would not underplay the challenge of managing the workloads here alongside other things. This is really, really important work. It's hugely important work. So we will give it the due regard. But achieving those timescales, I think we've said in the report, we see those as probably on the optimistic side. And achieving those timescales will be difficult, but that's what we would set out to do. Achievement of those timescales is not entirely within the council's gift. We are working with partners, and we'll just need to try and progress it as quickly, as the Chief Executive said, as thoroughly as we possibly can. So I hope that answers the question, Councillor Speed, in terms of reassurance. It's a difficult one, but we'll work at it. Thank you.
Okay. Yep. Thanks, Mr. Lorimer. Thanks,
okay,
Provost.
thank you very much, Councillor Speed, for your question. Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Provost, and thanks for all the answers to the questions so far. I kind of wanted to pick up on the public consultation aspect again, and I absolutely heard what both Mr. Lorimer and Mrs. Williamson were saying around the tensions between commercial sensitivity and information that is available in the public domain and striving for best value across all those different options, and how that public consultation sits within a wider range of decision-making processes, if you like, involving council. I just wonder if someone could give us a little bit more for the public's benefit around the weighting that the public consultation might be given in terms of the the decision-making processes. And I'm concerned, I guess, if we don't get that information sharing right, one of the outcomes might be an option that is at odds with what is best value as we might determine it. Because I mean that would be a poor outcome for all of us, I think. So what sort of expectations should the public have around the outcome of their contributions to that consultation in the decision-making process? Thank you.
Okay, Ms Williamson, maybe would you be able to answer that one?
Provost, I could, but I think probably it's better to bring in Jackie Buchanan on the statutory of the consultation.
Thank you very much. Jackie Buchanan.
Thank you, Provost, and it's a good question because clearly the public's view in terms of this matter is very important. So what we'll do is we'll do the consultation. As we've indicated already, we will involve CGLMC. In fact, we need to do that because of the commercial sensitivities as well as other partners that would have an interest. We would need to get their consent on some of the detail in terms of that consultation. We'll want to get the balance right between being able to have a commercial arrangement in place, but as you're suggesting, Councillor Bell, provide enough information so that the public are fully informed in relation to what the different options are. And then, as we do with any consultation that we have, we would have regard to the responses and respond to them in terms of what councillors feel in effect are what they consider to be the most important aspects of it, and what they can take into account and what they can then justify in terms of what the ultimate proposal that's taken forward is. So yes, that will be a big part of what we do, considering what Carnoustie Golf is for Angus and for the people of Angus.
Thank you very much for that, Mrs Buchanan. Are you happy with that, Councillor Bell? Thank you very much. Councillor Whiteside?
Thank you, Provost. Clear from the papers that we've been presented with and the briefing that we had that there are huge opportunities here for the future of golf at Carnoustie and also for Angus Council as a whole. I think obviously what comes with that is huge risk, and I think one of the risks, as I've previously articulated, is not being ambitious enough. Another risk I feel is delaying too much, and I appreciate the importance of carrying out proper due diligence and proper consultation, and I hope we do that thoroughly, but we also have to keep the timescale in mind, and I think we'll have to make sure that that is carried out swiftly and efficiently in order to keep key partners on board and not risk losing potential benefits that will be with us for a long time in the future. So just in response to Councillor Moore's questions, I don't think dragging out a consultation for months is the best way forward here, and I would like assurances that that won't happen.
The officer would like to reply. I'm sure that go on, Mrs Williamson.
Yeah, Provost, I think in the report it does say that the timing of the consultation will depend on other aspects of the due diligence required around the options. I think actually the wording something like timing will depend on the progress of the investigation, negotiation of the other options. To reassure Councillor Whiteside, I'm in total agreement. We have a balance here, a balance that must be struck for us as officers to give you all the information and advice you need to make a decision when the options come before you. That does involve the consultation, but it also makes the challenges around the timing for some of the options crucial. So we will do that with our best endeavours and make sure that we get that balance right.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Mr Williamson. You happy with that, Councillor Whiteside?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Boyd?
Yes, I think Councillor Whiteside was more a comment than the question, and that's why I put my hand up. My next one will be a question, but I'm not sure if Councillor Duff is coming in with a. Sorry, I want to make comment, but I don't know if Councillor Duff's coming in with a question.
Councillor Duff, have you got a question?
I think, like Councillor Boyd, I thought we'd sort of transmogrified on to comments now. So mine's really a comment. So I'll let Councillor Boyd go first.
Okay. Let's just. Are there any more questions? There are no more questions. Then Councillor Boyd, your comment.
Yes, it was just to say, no, just like as Councillor Fairweather said at the start, thank you to all the officers. I think when we were in that meeting, I had mentioned that this had been the best meeting that I'd been to as 11 years as a councillor for Angus Council and of course representing Carnoustie as well. And it was so good to see officers and all councillors working together for what's the best for Angus and Carnoustie. So I want to thank all these people that have been heavily involved in it. And I also want to thank Councillor Fairweather for putting this forward at the start of this meeting. So, sorry, that's my comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Boyd, Councillor Duff.
Yeah, thanks, Provost. I kind of want to really pick up from what Councillor Boyd is saying, really. And yes, it was a very good meeting on Tuesday, and I would really praise the quality of the papers, both the two papers we've seen today. I think in my time as a councillor, which is not quite as long as Councillor Boyd's, of course, it's certainly a very high quality of papers, a lot of good information, very readable, very clear, and thanks to all who've contributed to that. As others have said, it's a hugely important issue, hugely complex. I think it's very challenging for elected members. I think it's also very challenging for officers because it's complicated, it's long term. We've been presented with a number of options. I think it's important that we progress them. That's not to say that I and other members may have preferences amongst those options, but we need to keep them all open. We need to keep an open mind. And can I just perhaps suggest that if we are going to do due diligence, we have to do due diligence. We don't put a time scale on doing due diligence. Otherwise, it isn't due diligence. It's, well, we've got to do it by a certain date, so we'll have to rush something. Due diligence means due diligence, and we cannot afford to make a mistake here. So I think we have to do due diligence, and it really needs, for me, it needs to take as long as it takes. I mean, clearly, we don't expect it to take 5 years, but the point I'm trying to make is we don't want to set ourselves artificial targets, because we all know how much work is being done. We've got as well that due diligence has to be done properly, and that I would be very unhappy if that wasn't the case.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Councillor Duff. Councillor MacDonald.
Just reiterate what both Councillor Boyd and Councillor Duff said. I've been critical of reports in the past, and yeah, these are probably the best set of reports that I've read in my short time as a councillor. Just a couple of comments on the options. That it's great to see that the options are still maintaining local and public access to our golf courses, and also the charitable donations are in the options, and they're protected. Very, very important, and I'm proud to represent an internationally acclaimed golf course, and I'm proud that what it does for our community and the access it affords, not just young people, but people that just want to come and play from international to down the road. It's a really, really good thing, and that's the one thing I wanted to sort of press, is that this is not just a Carnoustie thing, though. And sometimes I feel like the golf gets lost in about being how many consultation responses are we going to get from just Carnoustie, and maybe people in Brechin or Montrose or Forfar won't be as engaged in this, when actually we look at from the papers there, the benefits it brings our county as a whole is massive. So it's just those little initial comments that I wanted to make. I'm so happy to see that the options present a really good way forward, and from the way the wind's blowing, it looks like we're sort of aligned as a council that we need to secure an elite level competition, and it's amazing that Angus can host something that is one of the best competitions in the world. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Councillor MacDonald. Councillor Salmond.
Yes, thank you, Provost. I really just want to cover off Councillor Speed and probably Councillor Duff's comments about staff availability and due diligence, and I'm really referring to recommendation 1.1 K1 and 3. So the decisions we make today and the direction of travel taken will be the beginning of the biggest journey this council has ever taken on how one of its assets is commercially developed. I would like to highlight the importance of the need for this council to procure the best external advisors we need in any area of expertise required, and that if additional council funding is required over and above the 125,000 request in recommendation 1.13, then subject to a detailed report, funding should be made available to ensure this council gets the best outcome for Carnoustie and the wider Angus economy. So what I'm really saying is that I believe that the 125 budget is probably the beginning, but possibly not the end.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Councillor Salmond. Councillor Braze.
Well, probably just echoing what other members have said. This is a massive decision that's looming in the future. It's a pretty simple decision today that we have to make. Whether we make the funds available for officers to explore the options that we want them to explore. And that's the easy bit today. The tough decisions might lie some distance down the road, but we've got to get this decision right. We'll only get one crack at this when the big decision's to be made, and if we get it wrong, it could have huge consequences for Angus. If we get it right, similarly, it could have huge and much better consequences for the whole of Angus. When it comes to consultation, while that's not really relevant to the paper that we're looking at today, it certainly will be relevant when we come to choose an option. And so when officers do come forward with a report into the consultation and proposals for it, I'll be looking at that very closely and really expecting the same quite outstanding quality of report that we have before us today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Braze. Any other comments? Okay, colleagues, I think we've kind of discussed this quite well. I do reiterate what everyone else has said. That this is a very important decision and a very important subject for Angus Council. And again, I'd like to thank everybody who has been involved, for the officers for producing excellent papers. And I think just as Councillor Braze just said, you know, this is not, there's a lot of hard work down the tunnel. As a famous politician once said, this is not the beginning of the end, but it's the end of the beginning for Carnoustie golf links. So I would ask you, do you agree the recommendation set out in paragraph 1.1? Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you very much, colleagues. The meeting is now closed, and enjoy your weekend. Thank you.
Thank you.